At dawn, the sail approached the shore so quietly that the flock of seagulls did not change its circle. The night sand had not yet been swept away from the embankment when the keel entered the harbor, and people in iron helmets formed a narrow path between barrels of fish and unfamiliar faces. The whispering was loud and prolonged. Today, prisoners from the islands were promised to be brought to the market, and the merchants wanted new hands, while the guards wanted new coins. Among the bound prisoners was a girl with sea salt in her hair. She walked cautiously, as if the shore was still swaying beneath her feet. Her name was Mira, and she tried to keep her head up so as not to fall to her knees before those who were already estimating how much her life might be worth. I welcome everyone who is listening to this story. I am a man, and I ask you to write in the comments where you are watching this video from. It is important for me to know where my stories are reaching. I hope you enjoy listening. The morning unfolded slowly. The administrator announced that trading would begin after prayers, and people gravitated toward the awnings, where barrels of oil, boxes of raisins, and bundles of salt were already on display. Mira noticed a board with faded sheets of paper leaning against a pillar. Each one had thin lines, names, amounts, and dates. An old man with ink-stained fingers explained that these were records of letters of freedom. He said that anyone who paid off a debt or ransom could receive such a letter, and that all papers were certified by notaries and kept by the town clerk. Mira looked at the letters as if they were doors. She remembered how, as a child, she sat next to her mother and learned to draw symbols on a smooth board while other children ran around the yard. At the time, it seemed like a meaningless game, but now the shape of a letter meant more than the strength of her hands. The bargaining began with shouts. The men raised their prices, and the women carried their children away from the row of captives. Mira was bought by a merchant named Gracious, whose shops occupied an entire corner of the city gate. He did not raise his voice, but simply raised 2 fingers, and the auctioneer announced that the deal was done. Gracchus led Mira through the noise to a warehouse, where bundles of wax, rolls of linen, and sacks of beans lay on the shelves. He ordered the senior servant to wash the captive, give her a coarse dress, and register her as a voluntary servant under a 3-year contract. He said that she had agreed to this herself, and that the notarial record had already been made. Mira heard this, and realized that the key to her future lay not in ropes and locks, but in lines of ink. The house was quiet. Wooden plaques with symbols of craft guilds hung on the walls, and on the table were counting bones and a heavy book with straps. The maids whispered that the master loved order, money, and short deals. Mira noticed a clay jug with a chipped rim by the wash basin, and a barely noticeable mark resembling a starfish glistened in the glaze. She knew this mark. On their island, it was made by the potter who once sent dishes in exchange for salt and cedar oil. She told herself that the paths of dishes and people often cross where papers lie. This simple thought seemed to her like a knife that could be hidden up her sleeve. The first few days she worked in silence. She carried water, cleaned the stone steps, sorted bundles of bay leaves and lemon peels. Her hands grew accustomed to the work, and her eyes to the details. She noticed that the flour sacks had different stamps on them, and among them was a recurring letter crossed out with a cross. The same letter was on the wax tablets at the counter. The counter said that the seals were changed every season to hide the source of the goods from prying eyes, and that stamps that looked similar to each other sometimes concealed the same hand. He didn't notice when Mira shifted her gaze to the straps of the large book. She saw that the straps were worn in the same place, as if the book was always open to a certain page. That same evening, a young scribe named Lauren came to the house. He brought a small bundle tied with string and told the manager that the owner had instructed him to leave it in the storeroom. The bundle was light, as if it contained a few wax tablets or a bundle of documents. Mira happened to be nearby, and was asked to take the bundle to the far chest. She carried it and put it in the corner. The chest clicked, but the lid did not close tightly. She moved it, and a narrow board with a burnt mark slipped out of the crack. A circle divided into 4 parts, and a small star in one of the sectors. Mira knew such boards. On the island, they were used to mark items that were to be exchanged, and each board corresponded to a notarized entry in the city books. She realized that she was looking at a sign that could be used to verify the merchant's words and the city records. The next morning, Mira asked to take a basket of lemon zest to the market. The manager shrugged and gave his permission. In the square, she paid a copper coin to the street scribe and asked to see the records of voluntary services performed in recent weeks. The scribe showed her the ledger. She saw her name written in neat handwriting, with her age, origin, and the amount of her debt indicated next to it, spread over 3 years, with the right to replace payments with goods. At the bottom was a mark of consent. She read it and almost laughed. The handwriting of consent resembled her childhood scribbles, but it contained unfamiliar elements that she had never used. She told the scribe that she doubted the authenticity of this particular consent. The scribe replied that the signature had been confirmed by a witness and a notary. He named the notary, and Mira was sure she saw the same letter on the straps of the book, Gracia, that was in the notary's seal. She set this knowledge aside, like a knife that needed sharpening. She became more attentive. A boy named Suleiman was bustling about in Gracia's shop. Everyone considered him a useless assistant. He stooped toward the floor, mixed up the bags, and was afraid to raise his eyes. He was born to a slave woman, whom the merchant had sold to a distant village, and many laughed that the boy resembled a broken cane. Mira noticed that Suleiman remembered the routes of all the parcels, knew where to loosen the knot in a tight bundle so that the goods could be removed without damaging the string, and could read at the level of signs, not letters, but the shadows of letters, the patterns of seals, the familiar dirt in the corners. Once he told her quietly that he had noticed a curved line on her scroll where others put a straight one. He said that a woman from the harbor had taught him to draw the curve, and that this woman had once given him a cord with a wooden star so that he would not forget the way to his father. He said that his father worked as the chief guard at the market. It sounded like a random detail, but Mira stored it in her memory. That same day, a woman came to the house with a basket of fresh apples. She was wearing a dark cloak, which she did not take off even in the heat. She told the maid that she had come on business and asked to see the master. The maids frowned. The manager was in charge of exchanges, but the woman insisted. Gracius came out and ordered the basket to be accepted. He said that the apples would go to the monastery kitchen, and in exchange, the woman would receive thread, salt, and bronze buttons. The woman nodded silently and placed a small bag of beans on the table. Inside was a scroll of paper, folded in half. It all looked like a normal business transaction, but Mira noticed that the woman's hands were burning from the hot air, like those who work at furnaces. She thought of the potter, whose mark she had seen on the jug. The detail seemed minor, but there was a thread to it. That night, Mira unfolded the scroll she had seen in the bag when the mistress had put it away in the storeroom. It was a copy of a voluntary service record with the name of another girl who had been bought in the same place where Mira had been bought. She saw the same crooked line, the same unusual sign of consent. She placed the 2 scrolls side by side and realized that the signatures were made by the same person, and that this person was neither of the girls. She remembered the apple seller, her warm hands, and decided that the woman worked for the same potter who marked the jugs with a star. The connection was only accidental in appearance. In the morning, she went to the market as if to buy bay leaves. She found the potter's shop. The old man with burns on his fingers said that he had been marking his products with a star for many years, and that he sometimes made custom tableware for merchants, including Gracia. He said that his brother's wife went to Gracia's house with apples and beans, because the merchant liked to trade without coins, and often gave fabric or salt instead of money. He said that he had recently seen a note from the woman to the manager, and that he had passed the note on to a young scribe named Lauren, who sometimes bought ink from him. Mira realized that Lauren was the thread that connected the shop, the house, the market, and the city book. She found Lauren at the gate, where he was copying letters for sailors. He said that every autumn merchants arrange many voluntary services because there are many captives in the harbor after storms. He said that sometimes people really agree to serve for the sake of a roof and food, and sometimes deals are made hastily. He said that notaries don't always see the people they are signing for because the papers can go through proxies. He said that Gracious likes to speed things up and often brings ready-made scrolls for signing. He said that he had seen a seal at Gracious's that was very similar to the seal of an old notary who had died long ago, and that the seal might have been passed down, but that it was wrong to use it for new papers. He said this and was frightened by his own words. Mira realized that he was willing to help, but afraid. She said that she had a small wooden board with a star in a circle, and that this mark could be used to connect jugs, scrolls, and beans. She said that if Lauren put these things together on the table in front of the city scribe, he would see the chain. She said she was ready to hide the board where no one would find it, and retrieve it when the time came. On her way home, Mira saw a cart with barrels stopped at the gate. The manager ordered everyone to step back and began checking the lids himself. He said that one barrel smelled strange, as if grass had fallen into it. He ordered a servant to bring an iron hook. When the lid was removed, a musty smell wafted from the barrel. Someone had hidden a rolled-up piece of cloth under a layer of oil. The manager pulled out the cloth and saw a small bag of coins and a piece of paper. He said it was a package from one of the partners and ordered it to be taken to the storeroom. Mira noticed that the letter was soaked in oil, causing the seal to dissolve and the letters to blur. This was the turning point when a routine oil delivery turned into a domestic thriller. The barrel was not just hiding money, it also contained lists of names. Later that night, Mira unrolled the sheet, dried it over a warm stone, and saw a list of new captives, including teenagers from a coastal village. Next to some of the names was a mark indicating consent to serve. The letter of consent was that very crooked line. Whispers began in the house. They said that the merchant was expecting an important guest. They said that the guest would bring linen cloth and certificates for new deals from a distant city. They said that the guards turned away when the merchant brought chests into the house. They said that a ransom fund had long been open in the monastery, where sailors and relatives deposited money for the release of captives, and that the merchant sometimes took coins there, but did so not for the sake of the people, but for appearances. Mira put these rumors together like page after page. She understood that she needed not only to expose one forgery, but to show that the whole scheme was fed by faceless signatures. She took a risk. She told Suleiman that she had a board with a star on it, that there was a letter in the barrel, and that the letter contained the names of his countrymen. She said that if he wanted to, he could step out of the shadows and do what no one else dared to do. Suleiman was frightened, but said he knew a man who did not seek fame, but could provide protection. He said that this man traded in wood for ships, and that his name was Mateo. He said that Mateo had once helped him hide from a drunken overseer, and that the man did not like dirty deals. Mira decided to meet with Mateo. The meeting was simple. There is a shed at the boat dock, where nails and rope are sold. Mateo appeared quickly. He listened silently. He said he had heard about Grazia's affairs, and that he always came out dry because he fed both the temple and the guards. He said he could help if she brought direct evidence to the city court: a forged signature, a mark on a jug, a letter from a barrel, and a person who would reveal who was slipping papers to the notary. He said he could provide money for the fee and a lawyer. He said that what was important to the court was not feelings, but the order of things recorded in the book. He said that if the scheme could be exposed, the court would confiscate the property. He promised to transfer part of the money to the redemption fund and that he was ready to act as a guarantor. He was an unexpected benefactor, and Mira felt that all the narrow bridges in her plan had become wider. The main weakness remained: Mira's connection to the merchant's house. She was his servant on paper, and any attempt to move could turn her into a fugitive. Then fate intervened in a different way, not by chance, but by a long-ago deed that came back like a boomerang. An old woman from a coastal village came to town. She was hunched over, but her eyes were lively. She said at the scribe's shop that she was looking for her sister's daughter, who had been taken away during a raid. She said the girl had a mole in the shape of a small drop on her left hand. Mira was standing nearby at the table and felt her chest tighten. She had the same mole on her left arm. The old woman said that her sister had once worked in a merchant's warehouse, but then left because she did not want to leave her child in the house of a strange man. She said she had heard that the merchant helped orphans in exchange for ransom money, but demanded services in return. She said she had brought with her an old wooden board that she had kept for many years because her sister had once asked her not to lose it. There was a star in a circle on the board. Mira realized that the old woman was her aunt. It was a hidden kinship, and suddenly the heavy salt in her hair became something like a shield. She had someone who could call her by name without fear. Her aunt told her that many years ago a merchant named Gratius borrowed money from her family to expand his shop. He promised to repay the debt with goods and services, but instead sold Mira's sister to another city. She ran away, married a fisherman, and then died of fever. She left her daughter a wooden plaque with a star on it, which was connected to the merchant's debt. This mark was placed on all the items used to pay for the house. If you collect dishes with this mark, you can show the court that the debt was not repaid according to the rules. It was not just a family confession. It was a thread stretched from the past to the present. Mira clutched the board and told her aunt that she would see it through to the end. She returned to the house and began to patiently collect small items: scraps of seals on jugs, straps from books, copies of scrolls with crooked lines. She told Suleiman every step she took, and he ran along quiet paths, eavesdropped on conversations, and brought news from the harbor. He said that 2 notaries would arrive in the coming days, one from the mainland and the other from a neighboring island, and that they would check the books. He said that the steward had ordered the old seals to be hidden, and the storeroom not to be shown to visitors. He said he had seen the owner hiding not only money in a barrel, but also small black stones, possibly cheap glass used to deceive buyers. This may not have been relevant to the case of freedom, but it revealed the merchant's habits. On the eve of the court hearing, there was a final attempt to intimidate her. Gratius summoned Mira and told the manager that the captive was planning to escape. He ordered a man with a club to be posted at her door for the night. He said that in the morning, the voluntary service agreement would be changed to more stringent terms because the girl was showing defiance. He said that in that case, she would remain in the house longer. The servant repeated that he would do as he was told. Mira realized that she had to act now. She told Suleiman that the window in the storeroom opened at night, and that through it she could pass Lauren a bundle with copies of the papers, a small board, and a book strap. Suleiman did as she said. He put the bundle on the boat where Matteo was sitting. Matteo took it to the town scribe. The morning was difficult. Many people gathered in court. The clerk brought copies of the records. The notaries looked at the seals. Matteo paid the fee and said he was requesting that the case of forged consent and illegal sale of people be considered. He said that a letter with names had been brought in an oil barrel and that the seal on the letter resembled that of the deceased notary. He said that tablets linking exchanges and debts had been found in the merchant's house. He said that there was a witness who would reveal the scheme. Everyone waited to see who would come out. At that moment, the people in the hall turned toward the door. The chief of the market guard entered. He said that he would confirm the words of a boy named Suleiman, because many years ago he had made a mistake and turned a blind eye to the game with seals. He said that at that time he had a relationship with a woman from the harbor, and a boy was born from that relationship. He said that this was Suleiman, and that now he no longer wanted to remain silent. He said that the merchant had a small weakness over him and took advantage of it. It was a blow that no one expected. The underestimated assistant turned into the one who broke the scheme, and his father, whom everyone feared, admitted his guilt. The hidden kinship came out again, but now for salvation, not for concealment. The court heard everyone out. The notaries said that the seal did indeed belong to the deceased, and that its use in the new papers was illegal. They said that the signatures with the crooked line did not match the handwriting of the people named. The scribe said that the record of Mira's voluntary service had been entered through a proxy, without the captive herself being present. He said that according to the rules, this was not allowed. Matteo offered to contribute funds to dissolve the deals and ransom the captives. He said that he would take part of the money from his own turnover, and part would be collected by sailors and the monastery's ransom fund. The judge said that the merchant's property was subject to confiscation, and that it would first be used to pay the ransom and fines to the city and the victims. He said that people who signed papers without witnesses would face punishment. He said that Mira would be given a letter of freedom. Gracious tried to object. He said that he had done everything out of old habit, that every merchant did so, that he had simply been less fortunate. He said that the city would lose income if it began to nitpick. He said that in difficult years he had fed the temple and given money for the bell. The judge said that there was an order in the city, written in a book, that redeeming people was more important than the sound of a bell, and that habit ceased to be an excuse when it was backed by broken lives. He said that one can love glory and give candles, but one cannot sell someone else's body under the guise of voluntary service. He did not raise his voice, and this made his words sound even firmer. Mira left the court with a scroll of freedom, and did not immediately believe that it was not a dream. In the square, she was given a mug of water. Her aunt stood next to her and held her by the elbow. Suleiman shifted from foot to foot and did not raise his eyes. Matteo nodded silently. There was nothing beautiful about that moment, but there was peace. Slavery ended, not because of miracles, but because of paper, and people who stopped hiding their eyes. The calm did not last long. When they returned to the aunt's house, the neighbors were already discussing that Grazia had accomplices who would not want to lose money. They said that among them were a salted fish merchant, an innkeeper, and one of the junior notaries who signed blank forms at night. They said that they would try to get back at least part of the cargo, or intercept the goods that the court wanted to sell. They said that gold had accumulated in the monastery's ransom fund, and that strangers already had their eyes on it. Mira realized that there would be no smooth romance. Years of ingrained habits do not change overnight. She decided to stay in the city for at least a few months to see the matter through to the end. She helped the scribe compile a list of those who needed to be ransomed. She pored over the names as if they were a pattern where each line had to find its match. She noted the ships that had brought the people, the places where the teenagers had disappeared, the families who could raise at least some money. She went to the monastery and spoke with the abbess. The abbess said that the treasury lived on donations from fishermen and craftsmen, and that every ransom was a long process of negotiation. She said it was important not to let the sellers profit from other people's misfortune. She said that people in the city liked to tell Eastern tales of kind robbers and beautiful captives, but in reality, everything was decided in the account book, She said that Ransom was not a novel, but a boring table with columns. Mira nodded. Inside her, the realization grew that myths live in the open, while documents lie in the shadows, and that the shadows must be brought to light. One evening, she was walking along the embankment and saw a familiar cart. The same crooked side, the same tar stain on the wheel, the same barrels. The driver said he had been ordered to take 2 barrels to the saltfish merchant's house. He said there was oil inside, but the barrels were light. Mira asked him to stop and called a guard. She said she had once seen letters and coins hidden in such barrels. The guard lifted the lid. Under a layer of oil lay small bundles. The first contained blank forms with a notary's seal. The second contained lists of names without amounts, and the third contained several pieces of women's jewelry, probably taken from captives. It was a new twist on the same domestic thriller. Objects that look peaceful turn out to be containers for deals. The guard said he would take the cart to court and check the fish merchant's house. He said he would start with the accounting books, and that now he would have a reason to do so. The next day, a package was delivered to Mira's aunt. There was no address on it, only a thin strand of red wool tied crookedly. Inside was a short note. An unknown person warned that Mira might be attacked in a narrow alley near the grape shop because someone wanted the papers back. Under the note was a small piece of wax with the imprint of that same old circle with a star. It could have been an old acquaintance of Lauren's or one of the potter's workers. It was a sign that Mira had invisible allies and that the eyes of the street were on her side. She decided to change her route every day. She took the long way, from the monastery to the port, from the port to the courthouse, from the courthouse to her aunt's house. She noticed that a short man with a wide belt was following her. He didn't come close, but he was always in her field of vision. Once she went into a shop that sold needles and thread and left through the back door into the passageway. The man hesitated. She realized that he was not paid for his intelligence, but for his presence, to scare people. She was not afraid because she knew that not all doors in the city were closed to her anymore. Work was underway in the court. The clerk untangled the chains of transactions. Notaries stopped signing papers without faces, and even those who had previously laughed at the attention to detail now counted the seals. The city was getting used to the new discipline, just as hands were getting used to the new salt. Some grumbled that there was more hassle, but many sighed with relief that there was less dirt. Matteo brought money for the ransom, and the monastery gradually sent people home. Sometimes someone would come to Mira and say that a sister had returned, and sometimes news would arrive that someone had died on the way. Mira heard every piece of news as if it were about her own life. Meanwhile, Lauren was preparing to leave for the mainland because he feared the consequences. He said he had family in another city and that they would give him a job as a scribe at the port. He said he would leave Mira a copy of the lists and a couple of tips on how to read old books. He said that in every book there was a place where the scribe's finger left a greasy mark, and that this mark could be used to understand which pages were turned more often. He said that books speak to those who know how to ask them the right questions. Mira listened and thought that her life would now be walking a fine line. A month passed. The city became calmer. Gracia was held in custody pending trial, and his shops were empty. The servants went their separate ways. Some found work with other merchants, others left for the countryside. Suleiman stayed with Mira's aunt, where he carried water, repaired the roof, and helped with small tasks. He blossomed like a man who could straighten his shoulders for the first time. The chief of the guard, his father, sometimes came and brought a basket of fruit. He said he was asking his son for forgiveness, and that he was ready to take responsibility for his part in the previous scheme. He said he had started reading books so that he would no longer trust the seals of strangers. He said it was hard for him, but he would keep going. One day, a woman in a dark cloak with hot hands came to her aunt's house. It was the potter's brother's wife. She said she wanted to return a small gold ring to Mira. She said she had once taken it from the hand of a girl who had come to exchange it with a merchant, and that she had been told to keep quiet about it. She said she couldn't do it anymore. She put the ring on the table. Inside was an old engraving, 2 letters that matched the names of Mira's parents. The aunt cried. Mira took the ring and felt that her connection to what was no longer there had become stronger. She said she would keep the ring as a sign that things remember people no worse than books. At the end of autumn, the court issued its final decision. Gracia's property went to cover fines and ransom people. Part of the money went to the city treasury, but the bulk of it was sent to the monastery. The court ordered merchants not to use powers of attorney to sign for people who were not standing before them, and prohibited them from keeping the seals of deceased notaries. It appointed a public inspector to check barrels, jugs, and parcels, and gave any resident the right to report strange cargoes. It was not a spectacular sight, but a series of lines, yet in those lines lay the new life of the city. That day, Matteo approached Mira and told her that he had a place for her in the office at the port scales. He said that she would not have to clean the steps, but would have to look at numbers. He said that the city needed eyes like hers. He said that he could arrange it as freelance work paid in coins rather than goods. Mira agreed. She understood that she would see many powerful people and their habits, but now she had literacy, an aunt, and her name in the book of freemen. She often remembered the morning when she was brought to the harbor. Back then, everything seemed big and foreign. Now, the same harbor was just a place where people pulled ropes and exchanged bags. She understood that the danger had not disappeared, that each season brought new captives to different cities, and that the ransom fund would always need coins. She knew that myths about Eastern fairy tales would live on because they were convenient, but she also knew that a document was stronger if people stood behind it. Sometimes those who had previously despised her came to her. They brought small gifts, asked to look at their papers, asked questions about how to distinguish a real seal from a fake one. She did not seek revenge or mock them. She showed them where to look, how to hold the sheet up to the light, where to look for belt marks on the book. She became an unsung hero who one day became visible. She did not think about words. She just did her job. At the end of winter, a young shipbuilder returned to the city from the mainland. He said he had seen a woman there who looked very much like Mira, and that she had told stories about how freedom is taken away and how it is returned. He said that people listened and remained silent, and then went to the scribes and asked how to get copies of their contracts. He said that there were cities where the redemption fund was just starting to operate, and that they needed someone who loved simple things: lists, stamps, belts, and small boards. He said he could arrange a meeting. Mira thought about it and decided to stay here for now. It was important for her to see how the new rules were taking root, how officials were getting used to inspections, how the boy who was considered a nobody was living without fear. In the spring, she went to the monastery and saw a group of people waiting their turn. Among them was a girl with a small mole on her left arm. Mira smiled. She approached the abbess and said she wanted to give part of her salary to the cashier. She said it was not charity, but a duty. The abbess nodded. She said that every name in the book was not just letters, but a turning point. She said that the city changes when people take on small responsibilities. She said that without such responsibilities, no great deeds happen. That same day, Mira brought home a new jug. It had no star on it, only fresh clay and a simple wave pattern. She placed the jug on the table and thought that things could live without labels if people agreed to look them straight in the face. She knew there would still be barrels of letters and carts of blank forms, but she also knew that now there were eyes that could see and hands that could open lids. And there was a court that did not like beautiful fairy tales, but liked neat records. The story did not end in one day, because life never fits into a single scroll. But in this city, among salt, clay, and wax, a new rule appeared. No one has the right to put someone else's signature and call it consent. If anyone tries, they will be stopped, not by loud cries, but by quiet routine. People who know that freedom is not a gift, but an order that is paid for with attention. Mira, Anti, Suleiman, Matteo, and even the tired chief guard became part of this routine. They did not seek glory, they just kept the line straight. And that was their victory. Thus, the myth of sweet Eastern tales gave way to a book with margins where every number mattered. And the ransom box, clay tablets, and maritime law became not a backdrop, but tools that gave people back their power. And if one day someone tries again to call human trafficking a beautiful word, there will be someone in this city who will unroll the scroll, hold it up to the light, show the mark, and say through retelling that it will not be so here.